I'm going to be talking about identity security tailored to JavaScript developers, but I'm going to be telling this story through the perspective of the Barbie movie. So, before we get started, let me give you guys a little bit of an introduction into who I am. So, my name is Ceora Ford. I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. So I came here from Philly. My flight was really short, and I always try to come to conferences in Atlanta because this is one of my favorite cities in the whole world. I'm currently a developer advocate at Auth0 by Okta. We had a table somewhere out in the hall to the left. And I'm just a little bit obsessed with the Barbie movie, just a little bit. I saw it 4 times in theaters, so it's my thing. It changed my life just a little bit. But aside from me, I think it's important for us to kind of think about why a JavaScript developer should even care about identity security. If you've ever been through, is anyone here self-taught or going to a boot camp or done like any kind of like CS degree program? I feel like identity security is rarely ever touched on in those kind of educational programs. So you might be thinking, why should I even care about this? Why is this relevant to me as a JavaScript developer, especially if you work more so on the front end side of things? Well, I'm here to kind of convince you as to why you should, invest a little bit in improving your education on identity security. And one of the reasons why is the statistic here. I think it's really important for us to talk about this because this happens literally every day. You've probably worked somewhere or you have an account with some sort of software company that has experienced an identity breach. 79% of enterprises experience identity breaches. So that's a pretty high number. And the interesting thing is the next statistic, which is that 99% of these breaches were preventable. So that means that the majority of the breaches that have happened could have easily been prevented. And so it brings up the question, why weren't they prevented? What stopped us from being able to stop these things from happening? I think personally, one of the main reasons is that we don't really have a good understanding of identity security. And I think that could be the difference between us having a breach and not having one. So again, that's why I think it's important, like as JavaScript developers, whatever framework you work with, whether you're on the front end or the back end side of things, having some basic identity security knowledge could really help you later on in your career when you are dealing with some of these things that could be the difference between having a breach and not having one. So the fun part is that this is where Barbie comes in. So I'm a big believer in teaching through analogies that we might be familiar with, because for me personally as a speaker, it makes it easy for me to remember what I'm talking about. And then as a person who also does a lot of learning, it makes it easy to understand what we're talking about as well. I feel like identity security can be kind of boring. It sounds boring, but if we tell it through the story of the Barbie movie, I hope that it'll be a little bit more interesting for you guys. So before we get into this, how many of you guys have seen the Barbie movie? I hope everyone raises their hand. I've given this 4 times, and I've never been in a room where everyone raised their hand, which is a little disappointing. It's very good. Everyone should go see it. That's your homework. There's no other homework. The only homework is to go see the Barbie movie before the end of the week. But just to give an overview of the movie for the few people here who disappointingly haven't seen the Barbie movie yet, it tells the story of Barbie in Barbie Land, and everything is perfect, and then things aren't. There are a lot of characters who have identity crisis. They go through an overhaul of the Barbie government by the Kens. And that kind of turns things topsy-turvy, but the Barbies band together and they somehow figure out a way to get things back in order, which you can see in the last picture. They, take over the Barbie government again and get things back on track and make a few changes to make the Kens a little bit happier as well. So that's the gist of the movie. But I think the important part to really take away from this is, like I mentioned, there are a lot of identity crises that happen in this movie. And so in my mind, as the identity security person, I think to myself, Barbie Land really could have used some identity security best practices. If Barbie Land had an identity security system in place, maybe none of this would have happened. And that also means we wouldn't have the Barbie movie, which is a bad thing, but still, stick with me here. So, like I said, there's a lot of different identities going on here. You have Ken, who goes through an identity crisis where he goes through the whole Mojo Dojo Casa House thing. Barbie has many identities where there's President Barbie, there's the Supreme Court Barbies, there's the stereotypical Barbie, there's the weird Barbie. So I think for us to really understand what's going on, we're going to start with a term called IAM. And IAM stands for Identity Access Management. And like I said, Barbie movie has a ton of identities at play here. So when we want to break this term down, identity access management, what does that actually mean? Well, it's basically the process of user validation and resource access. So it encompasses whatever technologies or protocols are at play that would handle user validation and resource access. So if we look at, again, the Barbie movie, if we compare this term to the Barbie movie, there's a lot of instances where the wrong people are in the wrong place at the wrong time. So for instance, Barbie leaves to the real world with Ken. Does Barbie belong in the real world? Not really. That's essentially her having access to the wrong resources. She should not have access to the real world. If we look at the bottom picture on the picture on the bottom right-hand corner, those are humans coming to the Barbie world. Humans don't belong in the Barbie world. Again, this is another instance of people having wrong access to the wrong things at the wrong time. And then Ken obviously goes through a whole identity crisis. So this is all about identity and who should have access to what and when and all that kind of good stuff. So as you can see, Barbie Land is a mess. People are in the wrong places. The wrong people are doing the wrong things. People have the wrong access to things they shouldn't have access to. So how can we restore order to the Barbie Land? How can the Barbies restore order? So this is where two key terms come into play. And I like teaching this through an analogy because for me, authorization and authentication are too close. And so I used to confuse the terms all the time. But hopefully by the end of this, the difference between the two will become very clear. So yes, let's first start off by defining what authentication is. So authentication at the very basic form is verifying who you are. So if you think about it in our world terms, if you go and you have to if you go to get a passport, you have to bring your ID, you have to bring your birth certificate, all of these things you have to bring to the table to make sure that you are who you say you are so that they can check up against your face and your name and make sure it matches all the official documents that you have. So that's authentication, verifying you are who you say you are. And so if we think about this again in terms of the Barbie movie, again, the Kens, if we think about the plot of the movie, there's a point in time when the Kens are trying to take over and they're trying to rewrite laws and turn Barbie Land into something that it's not. But authentication would verify that the Kens are not President Barbie. And President Barbie is the one who should have the ability to make laws and sign laws into actual action. So if they had an authentication system in place, they would have never gotten that far because it would definitively verify that they are not President Barbie based off of their identity and who they are. So that's authentication. What about authorization? What is this? What does this mean? So let's kind of break down the formal definition. Authorization dictates who gets access to what. So again, if we think about this in terms of in human terms, in our world terms, I always like to think about an office. So you might be able to get into the office because you have a special work ID, but that work ID might not allow you to get on every floor or have access to every individual office. So that's authorization, right? Who gets access to which rooms inside of the building. So you got past the authentication part where you go through security and they're like, you definitely are who you're saying you are, but that doesn't necessarily mean you get to access every single room. So we think about this in terms of the Barbie movie. What do the Kens get access to in Barbie Land? There are some things they can access and some things they can't access. So they have access to Barbie Land. They can pretty much go anywhere in Barbie Land. They can go to the beach. If you saw the movie, they go to the parties. They get to participate in many of the activities that take place in Barbie Land. So they get general access to Barbie Land. But what don't they have access to? They don't have access to the Supreme Court of Barbie Land. So that's why when they were making all those laws and making all those changes, things got topsy-turvy because they were not supposed to have access to that room to be able to make the laws that they were trying to make. So again, if Barbie Land had an IAM system in place, if they had authentication, authorization in place the way it should be, none of this would have happened. So if we move a little bit ahead, we kind of understand conceptually what's going on because we've talked about it in terms of Barbie Land and all that kind of cute stuff. But what does this look like in technical terms? So if we think about like a piece of software that you use on a daily basis, most software should have an IAM system in place. So an IAM system would include things like this: multi-factor authentication, seamless sign in and sign out. You want to be able to easily get into your account with a piece of software easily. You don't want any hiccups. You want it to be able to happen within a few seconds. And also, an IAM system nowadays includes multiple sources of identity. And we'll kind of talk more about what this looks like. So multiple sources of identity is basically when you log into an account and it allows you to access your identity information through another third-party service. So if I made a website today and it's some piece of developer software, I probably would want to include GitHub and Google as a source of identity because it's a developer tool, and it would make sense for you to be able to log in through the credentials you already have with GitHub and Google. It makes the whole process a lot easier, and it makes it more secure as well. And then if we think about multi-factor authentication, this is basically when you're trying to prove you are who you say you are when you're logging into an account, and they want another piece of information that can verify you are who you are. And so it usually comes in the form of some sort of 6-digit code that changes every minute, I want to say, or every 30 seconds. And these apps they provide you with that code so that you can get into whatever the application is. So Authy is one of them. Okta also has a multi-factor authentication service, and so does Google. And all of these are authentication features. So again, authentication is you verifying you are who you say you are. So this is how you actually say that, like, you prove your identity by seamlessly being able to sign in by using multiple sources of identity or through multi-factor authentication. There are some more things that an IAM system can include, and one of those things is role-based control. So the best way I can explain this is basically like being able to have like admin, editor, commenter, viewer access within an application. Those are things that you would determine internally. So if you're building an application and you want to give certain users, maybe someone on your team, access to certain things, but someone else who's just a user, they only get viewer access. That's what role-based control is. So you have a title, and this is what you get to see and access based off of your title. And then we have permission-based control. So the best way that I can describe this off the top of my head is I really like going to see movies, obviously, but I also really like to go see concerts. And so one of the ways that I keep track of what concerts are going on is through this app called Songkick. And the great thing about Songkick is that you can integrate it with your Spotify account. And Spotify obviously has all of your favorite artists, but in order for Songkick to access your favorite artists from Spotify, you have to give them permission to do so. So that kind of puts the power in the hands of the user. So you get to say, I would like for Spotify to hand over all the artists that I listen to Songkick, and I'm going to give them permission to do so. So that's permission-based control. And all of these are authorization features because, again, this is controlling who gets access to what. So again, this is kind of conceptual, but what actually is powering these features? What's going on behind the scenes? And this is when things get a little bit more technical. So one of the things that helps power authentication is the OAuth 2.0 protocol. I always have to think super hard before I say this because OAuth and Auth0 look too similar, so I always get confused. But yes, OAuth 2.0 is what controls identity, right? It controls authentication. So if we think about I just confused that. OAuth 2.0 controls authorization. So again, that's who gets access to what. So if we think back to the Barbie Land example, this is another reason why I have the Barbie Land example. It helps me keep on track. If we think about the Barbie Land example, the Kens have access to Barbie Land, but they do not have access to the Barbie Land Supreme Court. So again, OAuth 2.0 is the protocol that is behind the whole process for approving who gets access to what. So we look at this a little bit more hands-on. A lot of times we're talking about handling API resource access, and this happens through secure access tokens. So I'll show you guys a little illustration so you can kind of visualize what's actually happening behind the scenes. So again, if we think about that Songkick example, all of your information about what artist you listen to is kept in a secure token so that all of that information is securely encoded in there and it never gets passed in that transaction between Spotify and Songkick, which keeps everything very secure, but it also makes everything kind of seamless and easy because imagine if you had to enter every single artist you listen to manually. That would be tedious and not fun for anybody. But because we have OAuth 2.0, it's the protocol that powers this process of a token, all the information being held in a token being passed between both services or both APIs. And the token format can be different depending on what your needs are. But the most common one I think most people know of is probably JWTs, which is JSON Web Tokens. And so then the other protocol that's at play here that kind of is under the authentication umbrella is OpenID Connect. And again, this is going to verify who is who. So if we think about, again, the Barbie Land example, OpenID Connect would be able to verify that President Barbie is President Barbie, and she's the one who gets to make all the laws and sign off on things like that. So if we think about it again in technical terms, this is actually built on top of OAuth 2.0. So when I, again, show an illustration of how this works behind the scenes, you'll understand where OAuth 2.0 comes at play, but it specifically covers identity verification from third-party applications. So this has to do with multiple sources of identity. When we are logging into a social media website, a new one maybe through Twitter, that is powered by OpenID Connect. If you're logging into some sort of developer tool through GitHub, that is powered by OpenID Connect. And the important thing about knowing about OpenID Connect is that depending on what kind of service you're building or what kind of application you're building, it's going to dictate what third-party source of identity you want to connect to your application. So if I'm building like some sort of e-commerce site for people who are into fitness, it wouldn't make sense for me to have a third-party integration with GitHub because that doesn't match who my user base is. But it might make sense to have it through Instagram because a lot of fitness people use Instagram. So OpenID Connect will help you to be able to specifically make these configurations. And again, this is one of the reasons why it's good to be aware of these things so that if you're ever trying to build your own identity access management system on your own, you'll be able to know what to look into to make those kind of configurations work for you. And so again, OpenID Connect, this is how we're going to see where the OAuth 2.0 is at play, because all your identity information, again, is in one of those tokens, and it's passed from the third-party service to whatever application you're logging into now. So if I have my e-commerce site with all the fitness stuff on it, and I want to log in through Instagram, all my identity information from Instagram is in a secure web token that is passed between both services. And again, it can be in, there are a ton of different formats for these tokens, but one of the main ones, again, is JSON Web Tokens, which I feel like most people are probably familiar with. So, as you can see, identity security has a lot of moving pieces. We covered OpenID Connect, we covered OAuth 2.0, we kind of touched on JSON Web Tokens, which is a whole other thing. We can make a whole other talk about JSON Web Tokens on their own. And all these things are at play, and as a reminder, we're talking about identity. And this is information that should be kept secure. So there's a lot at stake. So it kind of can be hard to absorb all this. And we've talked about it from a surface level. But of course, there are a lot of intricacies that we can't cover in such a short amount of time. So where do we go next? What do we do next with all this information that we have? You could actually attempt to build your own IAM system if you want. I kind of emphasize that this is not easy. And it is good to know some more of the nitty-gritty details if you want to be more specific in your configurations and the kind of changes you want to make, or if you want to customize things a little bit more. But again, there's a lot at stake. We just talked about all those breaches that happen, and this can happen when you don't really know a ton about identity security. So you could take the time, however long it takes to become an expert in identity things, or you could use a third-party service like Auth0 to do it for you. So right now, I'm going to do a quick coding demo. It actually may not be that quick. Bear with me. I had actually, earlier today, I was trying to upload this little bit of code to GitHub so you guys could be able to code along with me if you wanted to. But I've been having all kinds of issues with GitHub today. I don't know what's going on. So bear with me as you watch me do this from scratch. So I have this very, very basic React application, which is basically the makings of a Barbie Land citizen website. And I consider myself a Barbie a little bit. So I'm going to try to log in as a Barbie Land citizen in my head. So we're going to kick this off. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into my Auth0 account so that I can have access to all of my configurations and admin tokens and things like that. So I'm going to go to applications, and here I have my Barbie Land application all up and ready. So what I'm going to do is I'll click on React because there's a piece of code that I want to copy and paste instead of having you guys like watch me type it out. So I'm going to go to my code editor. So I have, and I'm going to go into my terminal. And what I'm going to first do is actually install the Auth0 React SDK. So if I do add auth0/auth0-react, that should work hopefully. Okay, good. The amount of times I misspelled that and it didn't work. So we have Auth0, the Auth0 React SDK installed now. So I'm going to go to our main.js file, and here I'm going to import Auth0 provider, which is going to give us access to all of the Auth0 goodies that I'm going to try to demonstrate for you guys today. And this is where I'm going to copy and paste. I'm kind of cheating, but not really. I just figured you guys wouldn't want to see me like type this out and make mistakes. Also, is the font big enough, or should I make it bigger? It's perfect. Okay, good. So I'm just going to replace this here. And I think the most important like information you guys should know from this little snippet is the domain and the client ID. Technically, I shouldn't be showing you guys this, but it's for a demo. So I'm just going to delete it afterwards. But this is what gives you access to all of the Auth0 things when it comes to having that like integrated login and logout box and all that kind of good stuff. So now with that out the way, I'm going to go to our app file here, and I'm going to actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you guys a short little tour of this very simple application. So this is going to be our homepage. So this is what we see here. This is the Barbie Land we see here. So the welcome to Barbie Land, and then the login button. And we also have in our components folder, we have the login button, very simple, and we have a logout button. So what I'm going to do is before I even get started on the Auth0 stuff, I'm going to import the logout button. From, I don't know why it's not like auto doing it for me, but that's fine. Component/logout button. Okay, cool. So we got that in place now. So with that all done, just double checking my spelling and making sure everything's good. Okay, so we're also going to import this use Auth0 hook, which again is going to give us access to a bunch of methods that we need to make this work the way we want it to. So first I'm going to say, I'm going to declare this video const, and I'm going to access the user property and the is authenticated property. So the user property is what's going to capture all of our identity information that we'll probably get from a third-party service when we use multiple sources of identity. And then is authenticated is going to tell us whether or not the person is logged in or not, basically. So we're going to get all of this information from the use Auth0 hook here. Okay, and then with that in place, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to delete this return statement for now. And what I'll do is I'll create an if statement because again, we want, obviously, if the person is logged in, we don't want the login button to show up. We want the logout button to show up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little if statement, and it'll be like if the user is authenticated, what we'll do is we will return specific, that shouldn't be in cap locks. We'll return, and I'll put the little bracket thingies in place, and we'll return like an H1 that says like, welcome to Barbie Land. And we'll want it to show the person's name. So we'll say user.name. So we'll say, when I finish this, it'll say, welcome to Barbie Land Ceora, and I'll feel really good about myself. And then we'll have logout button here. So that's for if the user is authenticated. If they're not authenticated, then we'll have return what we have originally, which is the, hold on, I can't type today, which is basically the H1 that has welcome to Barbie Land. without the person's name because they haven't logged in yet, so we don't know their identity. And then we'll have the login button. So login button. And I just want to make sure that all of this is working. So let's just verify that this is working. I hope so. Hey, okay. Wait, let me log out. That wasn't supposed to happen. Why? Hold on. If I refresh the page, that shouldn't be happening. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Control C and then I'm going to npm run dev again. I don't know why that's happening because I don't actually have the code in here. Let's see. Ugh. Ugh. That's weird. I don't have the code in here, do I? No. We're going to pretend like that's not happening. So, say that one more time. I didn't hear you. Maybe so. That's probably what it is. You guys, I don't know how to clear those out. Go to incognito. Okay, let me go to incognito. Let's see. I'm going to close this window and this one too. And I'm going to go to incognito. Let's see if it. Okay, there we go. And as you can see, this button doesn't work at all. So, because we actually haven't done anything with the login button, we've just added like the logic for the home page. But let's like first go to the login button so that you can actually log in. So, and whoever shouted out the incognito tab, like, thank you, because I would have never thought of that. We would have been sitting here all day. Okay, so we're going to import use auth0 again. And with that in place, we will use specifically the login with redirect property. I hope I'm spelling this correctly. That looks right. And we'll set it equal to use auth0 with parentheses. And then with that in place, what we'll do is we'll create an on-click event. So on click, we will have a little function that'll fire off that'll basically call login with redirect and boom. So I think this should work. I'm double checking now to make sure that it works. Okay, and then we'll try it out. Hold on, let me rearrange the tabs. Okay, and we'll try logging in and see. Yay, we can log in with our this is the login box that auth0 like creates for us. You can kind of customize this in the auth0 dashboard, and you can also choose specifically what sources of identity you want instead of it just having to default to Google. But I'm being lazy, so I'm just going to use Google. And you can also like change the branding of it and stuff because obviously, wouldn't it be cute if this was pink? Maybe the next time I give this talk, I'll make sure that it's pink. Okay, so I'll continue with Google. And this is, right, because this is in my incognito tab. Now you guys get to see what I go through working at an identity company, having to do all this verification. Okay, and this is authorization at play. This is the OAuth 2.0 at play, so we have to give them permission to have access to profile and information and email. So it has our name, our profile picture, and then our email address. We're saying basically Barbie Land can have access to this stuff. So I'll say accept, and there we go. Welcome to Barbie Land, Ceora for it. My whole government name is out there now. And as you can see, the logout button doesn't work yet. So we're gonna go back to our code and we're gonna go to our logout button. And again, we're gonna import, I can't type, import use auth0. And this time we are going to, instead of calling the login, we'll call logout this time. Logout. And we'll set that equal to use auth 0. Right? Yes. Okay. It looked weird for a second there. Sometimes, like, when I'm looking at the code, it's like, what's actually going on here? Because I can't tell. Okay. So, again, we're going to add that on-click event. Event handler? Is that what they're called? I can't remember anymore. And this one is a little bit more, this one is a little less, I don't want to say less, yeah, it is less straightforward than the login button. So this one, we have to include a couple extra like parameters in it because when a user is logging out, you have to kind of define where they're going to be taken to. Because where are you going to return to when you log out? You don't want them to just be like in web space, in the ether, like floating around. So we're going to say we want them to return to our window.location.origin, which is basically going to take them back to the, I believe this takes them back to, for us, it'll take them back to the homepage, but you can like define that you want it to take them back, you want it to take them back to the page they were on before they logged in. I don't know if that makes sense because it's not really making sense in my head, but once you see what happens, it'll make sense once you visualize it. So I think that looks, I have to make sure I have all the right brackets. I didn't bring my glasses today, so I have to like lean in really close to see what's going on. So excuse me for that while I make sure. If I do Command Plus, it's gonna be like super large and like, oh, y'all can't see it? Okay. I asked if y'all needed me to up the font. Okay, all right, perfect. Can someone like help me? Someone needs to build an app that's gonna remind me to like bring my glasses with me every time I leave the hotel. Okay, so we do log out. It works. So yay! So basically, that's a very like straightforward, simple way of how you can integrate auth 0 into your applications. Obviously, like I said, there's a lot of different integrations you can make, or not integration, customizations you can make. We talked a little bit about like role-based access and all those kind of things you can more specifically do in the, where am I? In this like dashboard, this is where you get the settings and the add-ons and the connections and all that kind of good stuff where you can be a little bit more specific about the customizations you want. So that's why I like auth 0, because not just because they pay me, but also because you get to, it takes a lot of the complications out of doing identity security. It makes it a little, lowers the barrier to entry for people who want to create, you know, software or websites and applications without having to become an identity expert. So I think I have a couple more slides. Let me go back to my slides now. This is why I need to bring my glasses with me. Okay. So thank you for listening. Again, remember, above all else, you can try auth 0 if you want. I would like that. But more than anything, watch the Barbie movie. Don't leave here without watching the Barbie movie, please. And make sure to keep in touch. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And I also do a series of like live episodes or live streams there. It's called Let's Talk, and I talk about different things that are, you know, relevant to people who are earlier on in their career. It's also a lot of information that's good for anybody, no matter where you're at, but I specifically try to choose topics that I think people would like. If you are early career, you could also follow me on Twitter. And this QR code is going to take you to our newsletter. We have an identity newsletter that goes out weekly, I want to say, and it's no marketing content, it's just developer content. And it's all identity security related stuff. So if you want to become more knowledgeable about that instead of just letting auth 0 do everything, then that's the place to be. So again, thank you guys for listening. I have a lot of extra time because I expected that coding demo to take a lot longer. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have, or you guys can just like chill in here because that's what I'm going to do. I figured I should just stick around for the next like 15 minutes since this was supposed to be 50 minutes long. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that. This is like one of my favorite talks to give. Thank you.
How easy is it to implement the role things? Can you train them to do that?
Yeah, I'll show you. The role-based control is right here on the, let me actually, because this is actually so small. Let me make this bigger. Okay. if you look over here, user management is where the role base happens. So all this is like where you would create the roles. And also, where did it go? Oh, shit. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to swear. Okay. Wait, no, I didn't mean to click on that. And this is where you would see all the users you have for your application. So obviously, I only have 2. But if I had more people logging in, you would see all that here. And this is where you get to assign roles to different, like, I haven't made any roles, but like if I made an admin role and I could define what like things they get access to here, I would assign the roles through this dashboard where I get a view of all the users, if that makes sense. So that makes more sense if you have a bigger application, especially with something like where you have a team of people who are working with you internally, where you want to give them certain access to certain things. So yeah, any other questions? Did that answer your question? Okay, perfect. Any other questions so far? No, I am not. I actually don't like West Philly. I beef with West Philly. I do not like it over there. But no, I'm from North Philly, so are there any celebrities from North Philly? There's only Will Smith from West Philly. I'm trying to think. Meek Mill is from the worst part of the city. He's from Southwest Philly. That's the worst part of the city. Oh my God, terrible place. Don't go there. If you come to Philly, don't go there. Kevin Hart's from North Philly. Yeah, he's from the same neighborhood my dad is from, so. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It's 4 o'clock. Like, I think this is like the last talk of the day, and low-key, I was tired, so I appreciate you guys sitting here and listening to me. Because if I were in your shoes, I probably would have went back to my hotel and went to sleep. So I appreciate it a lot.
It was a great talk. Thank you.
Thanks.